My name's Tom DiNardo. I am the Wine Zealot. And today we are touring Richland, Washington, and one of Washington's best wineries, one of my personal favorites, Barnard Griffin. In the next few minutes, we'll be touring and tasting some of Washington's best wines. Again, welcome to the Wine Zealot and enjoy Barnard Griffin. So Rob, it's an interesting name, Barnard Griffin, because your name is Rob Griffin. So how did you come up with the winery name Barnard Griffin?
Well, my wife's name is Deborah Barnard, and we started our winery back in 1983. I'd been making wine in the state for about 7 years at that point, and it was time to start something small of our own. And honestly, I'm the one that decided to call it Barnard Griffin. I think it sounds better than Griffin Barnard. And she didn't argue about the point, so hence we are Barnard Griffin. We wanted to put our names right on the bottle. We're very proud of what we're doing, and we didn't want anything that we were going to hide from. So we put our own names on it, and we've never regretted it.
You actually studied winemaking at UC Davis, too, is that
Yes,
correct?
I studied winemaking at UC Davis. I graduated in 1975. And I took my core classes from a generation of professors. They were actually all retiring in 1974, so I took some of my core courses early so I could get this generation of experts who brought the California industry out of prohibition. So it was a very different industry, and especially with the perspectives that these, I'll say gentlemen, because at that time that's what they were, had on the industry, very different than now. I can remember my professor of wine tasting and history and all of that, Dr. Maynard Amory, whose name is a touchstone, standing up in front of us in a lecture explaining that fermenting Chardonnay in a barrel is a, quote, filthy practice, and B, any Chardonnay that's undergone malolactic fermentation is spoiled. Well, we don't think that way anymore.
Not anymore. In California.
In California, or of course here, where we have a little more reason to use both of those techniques based on our geography. But what I'm trying to get through is that it was a very different world then, and the rules he came up with for the time were correct, because both the consumer expectation and the technology was nowhere near what it is now. So anyway, that's only 40 years ago, but it seems like longer than that.
And I understand you also had some FaceTime with another legend at UC Davis, and who would that be for those of us who may
Well,
know?
actually, my uncle had a vineyard in Oakville in the Napa Valley, and he sold his fruit to Beaulieu Vineyard, which was the top of the heap in those days. And the winemaker there was Andrei Chelichev, who I got to meet.
Very famous name in the wine world.
In my first job out of college, I was an assistant winemaker at Buena Vista Winery in Sonoma. And Andre was our consultant there, and I got to sit in the lab sessions and wine discussions with him. So I learned an enormous amount just listening to his very pithy distilled advice of what we should be doing with the wines that were there. So I don't like to claim to be a protege, and I don't like to use his name as a touchstone. It means more to me than that. Right. Since you brought it up, I'll admit it.
Now, back to your wife. So we understand that she's quite an accomplished artist, much like my fiance is, who's the wonderful personality behind the camera. And I understand your wife is the wonderful personality behind DB Studio. Tell us about it.
Absolutely, yeah. She took her degree in hospital administration and worked in that field for a number of years, but that stopped being very much fun, and I needed her help in the winery. She was responsible for figuring out how to get a building built and some of those nuts and bolts things. Well, I was making 20,000 cases of wine without a facility. So it was a challenge. But so she left hospital administration, and a few years later took up fused glass and has become quite an artist. And she operates a studio that's both her own production space, but it's also a teaching space. So we do everything from classes for 4-year-olds to professional seminars led by international experts in the field. So it's a unique thing for a winery. I don't think you see any other winery with a fused glass studio.
want to just get some more background and information about the winery. So I know you said you've been making wine since 1977. You formally opened the winery in 83, correct?
We started the winery in 83.
Acquired.
Let's say the label was in the market with the 83 vintage. That's the safest way to be honest about it.
And the big year, though, where things really mushroomed was in, as I understand it, 1987?
Actually, we built this facility in 1997.
97.
So we had been in the business with Barnard Griffin for 15 years before
Wow.
we actually got a facility put together. This out of necessity. We weren't trying to run down a fortune we made in the high-tech field or something.
Yeah.
We had to bootstrap this, so we literally started with some borrowed grapes and as many French oak barrels we could afford to buy with pocket money, and from the very first year we were profitable because we had to be. So in essence we left the bet on the table like any good roulette player, and here we are making 70,000 cases of wine.
Oh, that's great to know. 70,000 cases a year.
Yeah, and that sometimes I think that's too big to be small and too small to be big, but it works with our particular model, which is reasonably priced wines at high quality, and as long as we can
And I'll vouch for the quality.
as long as we can sustain volume, it's a great program for us. We employ 20 people here, and we sort of believe in the economics of scale and also keeping
Absolutely.
things affordable for people.